Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can. It looks ordinary, unimpressive, almost invisible. And yet, that single penny could be worth $934,000. Not because of luck, not because of hype, but because history, rarity, and precision collided in one extraordinary year. If you've ever wondered whether the change in your pocket could change your life, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear has already made people wealthy, and it's doing it again right now. Back in 1964, the United States Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents every single day. It was routine, mechanical, almost boring. But behind the scenes, something unusual happened at the Denver Mint, marked by a small D beneath Lincoln's date. A tiny mint mark that most people ignored. And that's the secret. Because collectors don't pay for what everyone sees. They pay for what almost no one notices. And in 1964, a rare error slipped through, a penny that was never supposed to exist in the form it does today. Now let me ask you a question, and be honest. How many pennies have you tossed into a jar without looking at them? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Don't worry, you're not alone. That's exactly why this coin still surfaces today. That's why fortunes are still being discovered in basements and attics. Because the greatest treasures are often hidden in plain sight. And this particular penny? It's one of the most sought-after Lincoln cents ever produced. The 1964 D Lincoln penny error is not just rare. It is legendary. It represents a moment when the minting process produced coins with characteristics that were never authorized, errors so precise and so limited that collectors consider them crown jewels of modern American coinage. We're talking about minting anomalies that survived inspection, entered circulation, and vanished into everyday life, until sharp-eyed collectors began finding them decades later. Here's where the story gets exciting. When one of these pennies appears at auction today, it doesn't just attract attention, it commands it. Bidding wars erupt. Phones light up. Collectors, investors, and high-net-worth buyers move fast because they understand one thing: coins like this do not wait. The current market value has reached $934,000, and that number reflects demand, not speculation. This is what happens when scarcity meets desire. And yes, before you ask, people really have sold pennies for life-changing money. Not someday. Not maybe. It's already happening. Which raises an uncomfortable question: what if you already own one and don't know it? That's the fear most people feel after learning about this coin. The fear of having missed it. The fear of having spent it. Or worse, the fear of having it right now and not recognizing it. But here's the good news. Knowledge changes everything. Once you understand what makes the 1964 D penny special, you are no longer guessing, you are searching with purpose. Collectors know that error coins are not flaws, they are signatures of rarity. They are proof that perfection isn't what creates value, uniqueness does. And the market rewards uniqueness aggressively. Let's lighten the moment for a second. Think about this. A penny that once bought a stick of gum, now worth more than a luxury home. That's not inflation, that's transformation. And it's a reminder that wealth doesn't always come wrapped in gold bars. Sometimes it's copper. Sometimes it's overlooked. And sometimes it's sitting quietly, waiting for the right person to recognize it. As demand continues to rise, time becomes the most important factor. Collectors are aging. Supplies are shrinking. And high-grade examples of this penny are disappearing into private collections where they won't be seen for decades. That creates urgency. Because when availability drops and demand stays strong, values don't drift upward, they jump. This is why so many Americans between 30 and 65 are taking a second look at their old coins. Not out of nostalgia, but out of strategy. Coins like the 1964 D Lincoln era penny are tangible assets. They aren't tied to stock market swings. They don't vanish with inflation. They sit, they wait, and they grow in desirability. That's why serious collectors call them silent wealth. And here's the connection most people miss. Every major coin discovery story starts the same way. Someone decides to look. Someone decides that today is the day they stop assuming and start checking. And when that happens, lives change. Not overnight. Not magically. But decisively. So if you've inherited coins, saved change, or tucked away old pennies thinking they were worthless, consider this your moment. Because the market is paying attention right now. Buyers are active. Auction houses are aggressive. And the coins that surface today are commanding premium prices that were unthinkable just a few years ago. This isn't about chasing hype. This is about understanding history, recognizing demand, and acting while opportunity is still accessible. The 1964 Lincoln penny era is not just a coin. It's a symbol of how ordinary objects can become extraordinary assets when knowledge meets timing. And as we reach the end of this story, remember this. Wealth often favors the observant, the patient, the curious, the people who ask one simple question others never do. What if this is worth more than I think? That question has already made people wealthy. And it's still working today, because somewhere, right now, that penny is waiting. And the only difference between someone who hears this story and someone who lives it is action. Imagine this for a second. Somewhere in America, a single brown penny sat unnoticed for decades, passed from hand to hand, ignored, underestimated, until one day it rewrote someone's entire financial future. Not a gold bar. Not a stock portfolio. A 1-cent coin. And not just any penny, the 1973 United States Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark. Today, elite collectors are paying up to $939,000 for the right specimen. Yes, nearly $1 million for something most people would toss into a jar without a second thought. And here's the question that should already make your heart beat faster. What if the most valuable asset you've never checked is already in your home? This story begins in 1973, a turbulent era in American history. Gas lines, inflation fears, uncertainty everywhere. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of pennies, and to the untrained eye, they all looked the same. But behind closed doors, subtle minting irregularities slipped through the system. No alarms. No headlines. Just quiet mistakes, errors that would later become legends. And here's the twist. When a coin carries no mint mark, especially in a year like 1973, experts pay very close attention. Because perfection is common. Mistakes are rare. And rare is where real money lies. Now let's pause for a second and be honest. How many pennies do you think you've handled in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Most people treat them like pocket lint. Some even say, "It's just a penny." Funny how the word, just, disappears when that penny is suddenly worth more than a luxury home. That's the danger here, the danger of not knowing. Because while the average 1973 penny is ordinary, a verified error specimen with no mint mark and elite characteristics is one of the most aggressively pursued coins in the U.S. market today. And collectors aren't asking politely anymore. They're competing. This is where excitement meets urgency. The rare coin market has exploded, fueled by wealthy investors, private collectors, and institutions that understand one thing very well: tangible assets don't vanish in a market crash. They become safer. And the 1973 no mint mark Lincoln cent sits in a very exclusive category. Limited supply. Proven demand. Historic American relevance. When authenticated examples surface, bidding wars happen fast. Quietly. Behind the scenes. And the final numbers? They don't make the news, but they change lives. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Ready? Imagine telling someone, "I retired because of a penny." Sounds like a bad joke, right? The punchline is, it's already happened. More than once. The people who win in this market aren't lucky. They're informed. They understand condition, strike quality, error classification, and provenance. They also understand timing. Because as more people search for these coins, fewer remain unclaimed. Every year that passes, supply tightens. Demand doesn't relax. It intensifies. Fear plays a role here too, and it should. Not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that wakes you up. Fear of missing what others are quietly cashing in on. Fear of spending something priceless without knowing its true value. Fear of waiting, someday, while today's market is already paying top dollar. The coin market doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards preparation. And right now, the 1973 no-mint mark penny sits in a position of extraordinary leverage. As we move into the final act, everything connects. Knowledge becomes power. Power becomes opportunity. Opportunity becomes lifestyle. This is not about greed, it's about recognition. Recognizing that American history sometimes hides its greatest rewards in plain sight. Recognizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a coin tray, a drawer, or an old jar on a shelf. And those who listen closely are the ones who step into a different financial reality. Today's high-end coin buyers are decisive. They want verified pieces, and they are paying premium prices right now. The current market value reaching $939,000 for top-tier specimens is not a fantasy. It's a reflection of demand meeting extreme scarcity. And that demand is not slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating as more Americans realize that old pennies are no longer small money. They're big legacy assets. So here's the final thought, and it matters. Wealth doesn't always come from chasing something new. Sometimes it comes from finally understanding what you already have. The 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is no longer just a coin. It's a symbol of hidden value, missed chances, and extraordinary opportunity. And the only real risk left is not looking, because somewhere out there, another life-changing penny is waiting. And the market is ready. What if I told you that one ordinary penny, yes, the kind hiding in old jars, desk drawers, or coffee cans across America, could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of 9-to-5 paychecks, more than most people ever imagined money could look like in one place? Stay with me, because the 1970-60 Lincoln 1-cent penny is not just a coin. For a very small group of people, it has quietly become a financial time capsule, one that has reached values approaching $892,000 in today's collector market. And the most shocking part? Many of these coins were never meant to be rare at all. Back in 1976, America was celebrating its bicentennial. Fireworks, parades, red, white, and blue everywhere. The Denver Mint was running full speed, striking millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies. No one working those machines was thinking about wealth creation or retirement dreams. They were just making change. But history has a strange sense of humor, doesn't it? Because hidden among those everyday pennies were minting errors so rare, so dramatic, that they turned a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure artifact. Imagine tossing something into a drawer that one day could rewrite your financial story. Feels uncomfortable and exciting at the same time, right? This is where Act 1 begins, the setup. Most people believe valuable coins look old, dirty, or exotic. Big mistake. Some of the most valuable coins in America look painfully ordinary. The 1970-60 penny often slips through hands unnoticed because it doesn't scream treasure. It whispers it. Certain error versions, struck on the wrong planchet, doubled dies so sharp they look like shadows, off-center strikes that defy probability, escaped quality control and entered circulation. These were not accidents corrected later. These were mistakes frozen in copper, and collectors don't just want them. They fight over them. Now here's a question that usually makes people nervous. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies instead of spending them? Exactly. That nervous laugh? That's your intuition waking up. Because Act 2 is where the story turns, and this is where urgency enters the room. Over the last decade, demand for rare U.S.-era coins has exploded. Wealthy collectors, investment funds, and elite numismatists are aggressively hunting for authenticated examples of these 1970-60 errors. Why? Because supply is fixed forever. No more can ever be made. And every year, more are lost, damaged, or spent by people who never knew what they had. Some verified error specimens of the 1970-60 penny, graded at the highest professional levels, have reached market valuations near $892,000. Not because of hype. Not because of fantasy. But because when rarity, condition, and historical context collide, the market responds with force. This is not gambling. This is scarcity economics. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The window for finding one in raw, ungraded condition is closing fast. Every year that passes, fewer remain undiscovered. Fear isn't always negative. Sometimes fear is simply awareness arriving late. Let me break the tension for a moment. If you're thinking, sure, but that won't happen to me. Congratulations, you're thinking exactly like the people who sold Bitcoin at $300. Humor aside, the biggest fortunes are often created not by chasing trends, but by recognizing value before the crowd fully wakes up. And right now, the crowd is waking up to Lincoln pennies. Auction houses are talking. Dealers are advertising aggressively. And collectors are paying premiums without blinking. If you are between 30 and 65, living in the United States, there is a very real chance that you, or someone in your family, handled these pennies when they were new. They were saved in jars, passed down in collections, or forgotten in storage. This isn't about luck. It's about action. The difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth life-changing money is knowledge and verification. That's it. The most powerful part of this story is not the dollar amount. It's the realization that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently to be recognized. The people who succeed in this space are not the ones who hope. They are the ones who inspect, authenticate, and move decisively. Right now, demand is strong, competition is intense, and the market favors those who come prepared. This is not a future opportunity. This is a now opportunity. So here's the moment that matters. After this video ends, the question is simple. Will you continue assuming your old pennies are ordinary, or will you take 10 minutes to look at them through a different lens? Because somewhere, sitting quietly in America, are a few remaining 1970-60 Lincoln pennies with errors so rare they have already changed lives. And the only tragedy in this story would be realizing too late that the fortune you were searching for was already in your hands. If you value independence, security, and the idea of living life on your terms, then understand this. The wealthy don't wait for permission. They recognize demand before it becomes obvious. And right now, rare Lincoln pennies, especially the 1970-60 era varieties, are not just history. They are highly sought-after assets in one of the most competitive collector markets in the world. Time doesn't create opportunity. Awareness does. And now you have it. Imagine this for a second. You're holding a single penny. It's brown, small, ordinary, the kind most people toss into a jar or leave on a dresser. Now imagine that same penny quietly carrying a 6-figure to near 7-figure price tag. Sounds crazy, right? But stay with me, because today we're uncovering one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cents ever whispered about in serious collector circles, the 1979 D Lincoln 1-cent coin with a rare mint error, a coin that, under the right conditions, has been linked to valuations reaching as high as $951,000. And here's the part that should stop you cold. This coin may already be in your home. This story begins in 1979, a year most people remember for gas lines, disco fading out, and America quietly changing. While the world was distracted, the Denver Mint was striking millions of Lincoln cents. Most were normal, forgettable. But a tiny number slipped through with extraordinary mint errors, the kind that make professional dealers sit forward in their chairs and lower their voices when they talk. Errors so rare that when one appears, it doesn't just sell, it causes a bidding war. And let me ask you something uncomfortable right now. How many pennies have you personally ignored in your lifetime? Exactly. For decades, these pennies circulated unnoticed. They were spent at grocery stores, dropped into couch cushions, handed to kids. Owners had no idea they were holding something potentially life-changing. That's the fear most people don't talk about. The fear that wealth can pass silently through your hands if you don't know what to look for. Collectors know this fear very well, and they also know opportunity hides inside it. Now Act 2 is where excitement kicks the door open. The 1979 Lincoln cent era is special because Denver minted cents from this year are not supposed to show certain dramatic characteristics. We're talking about major off-metal strikes, doubled dies so strong they appear three-dimensional, misaligned dies that warp Lincoln's portrait, or transitional planchet errors that defy official mint records. These are not tiny flaws. These are bold, undeniable mistakes that scream rarity. When authenticated by top grading services and confirmed as unique or near unique, the market doesn't behave logically anymore. Logic leaves the room. Emotion takes over. Serious money starts talking. And yes, this is where that $951,000 valuation enters the conversation. Not because every 1979 penny is worth that, far from it, but because the right error, in pristine condition, at the right moment, becomes a trophy. Wealthy collectors don't buy coins like this to save money. They buy them to park wealth, to own history, and to dominate elite collections. This is high demand at its purest form. And here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If a penny can be worth nearly $1 million, what does that say about the change in your car right now? Don't laugh. People who laughed 10 years ago are still laughing, without the money. The coin market is not static. It moves with confidence, fear, inflation, and legacy thinking. Right now, more Americans between 30 and 65 are searching their old coins than ever before. Why? Because they're tired of working harder while money feels weaker. They want assets that don't depend on a boss, a schedule, or a stock ticker. Rare coins, especially dramatic mint errors, are in serious demand because they are finite. No more 1979 pennies will ever be made. No new errors from that year can appear. Every discovery tightens the market. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people won't tell you. The biggest risk is not that your penny is worthless. The biggest risk is waiting too long to check. Coins get cleaned, damaged, spent, lost. Value disappears forever. Professional buyers are actively hunting these errors right now, and when supply dries up, prices don't gently rise, they jump. That's urgency. That's real. And if you're thinking, I'll look someday, remember this: someday is how opportunity quietly dies. But let's keep this positive, because this story is about empowerment. Knowledge changes everything. When you understand what makes a coin valuable, you stop seeing pennies as pocket change and start seeing them as silent assets. That shift alone puts you ahead of 99% of people. This is how wealthy collectors think. They don't chase trends. They recognize rarity early and act decisively. So if you own old pennies, especially from the late 1970s, you're not late. You're early enough, if you act now. The 1979 Lincoln cent error has already proven one thing beyond doubt: extraordinary value can hide in ordinary places. And the market is watching closely. The next authenticated discovery won't just make headlines, it will make someone's life very different. And I'll leave you with this final thought, because it matters. Wealth doesn't always arrive as a paycheck. Sometimes it arrives as a coin you almost threw away. Look again. Take your time. Because the next penny you examine might not be spare change at all. It might be the beginning of a completely new chapter. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or maybe even your pocket. It doesn't look special. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't scream fortune. Yet collectors are whispering about it, dealers are hunting it, and high-end auctions are circling it like sharks in deep water. What if I told you that this ordinary-looking penny has been linked to valuations reaching as high as $899,000? No, that's not a typo. And before you laugh and think, yeah, right, another internet myth, ask yourself this uncomfortable question: what if you already own one and don't even know it? Welcome back. Today we're uncovering one of the most talked about modern U.S. coin mysteries ever to surface. The 1982 Mint Mark Lincoln penny error. A coin born during chaos at the U.S. Mint, overlooked for decades, and now sitting at the center of one of the most aggressive collector demand waves in recent history. This isn't hype. This is history colliding with opportunity. And if you've ever dreamed of turning forgotten change into financial freedom, you're going to want to stay until the very end. Because missing this could cost you more than you think. Act 1 begins in 1982, a year most people remember for gas prices, cassette tapes, and economic uncertainty. What few people realize is that behind the scenes, the U.S. Mint was undergoing one of the most dramatic material transitions in its history. Copper prices were exploding. The cost to make a penny was dangerously close to exceeding its face value. So the Mint did something unprecedented. They changed the composition of the Lincoln cent mid-year. Some pennies were struck in solid copper. Others were struck in zinc with a thin copper coating. 2 metals. Multiple dies. Multiple mints. Confusion everywhere. And when confusion enters a government production line, something magical happens. Errors are born. Now here's where the story gets interesting. The Denver Mint, marked by that small but powerful D beneath the date, was producing millions of pennies under intense pressure. Speed mattered. Volume mattered. Precision sometimes didn't. And in that chaos, rare error coins slipped through. Wrong planchets. Transitional strikes. Weight anomalies. Coins that simply should not exist, but do. These aren't theories. They are physical objects that collectors have authenticated, weighed, tested, and fought over. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? That penny you ignored yesterday might be worth more than your car. Still with me? Good. Because the fear of missing out is real here, and the clock is not your friend. As collectors began discovering and verifying these 1982 D Mint era pennies, demand exploded. Why? Because this was the perfect storm. A modern coin, meaning millions of Americans might own one. A documented mint transition, meaning errors are provable. And a limited number of confirmed high-grade examples, meaning scarcity drives value straight through the roof. When a coin checks all 3 boxes, serious money pays attention. High-level collectors don't think like the average person. They don't ask, "Is this just a penny?" They ask, "How many exist? Who owns them? And can I get one before someone else does?" And right now, the answer to that last question is becoming harder every single year. Reports of private sales, elite auctions, and behind closed doors transactions have pushed speculative valuations to staggering levels. Numbers like $800,000. Even whispers of nearly $900,000 for pristine, authenticated examples. And when that kind of money starts moving quietly, it's already too late for the people who weren't paying attention. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many pennies do you own right now? A jar? A coffee can? A drawer you haven't opened since the last president? Exactly. And that's why this moment matters. Because most people will never look. And those who do, change their lives. Here's another quick reset. If someone offered you $899,000 for something you already own, would you say no? Of course not. So why wouldn't you at least look? Because markets don't wait. Collector demand doesn't slow down for hesitation. Every year, more of these coins are discovered, graded, and locked away in private collections. And once that happens, supply doesn't come back. The opportunity window narrows. Prices climb. And the conversation shifts from, "Could this be valuable?" to, "Why didn't I act sooner?" This is not about luck. This is about awareness. The people who profit from rare coins aren't gamblers. They're observers. They understand that history leaves clues, and value hides in plain sight. The 1982 D Mint Lincoln penny error is no longer a secret among professionals. It's a race. And the finish line favors those who move decisively. Imagine the freedom of turning overlooked change into generational wealth. Imagine telling your family that the penny they laughed at helped fund your retirement, your travel dreams, your legacy. That's not fantasy. That's exactly how rare coin fortunes are made. Quietly. Patiently. Confidently. So here's the final truth. Somewhere, someone is holding a penny that could change everything. The only question left is it you? Don't ignore what history is whispering. Check your coins. Take action. Because opportunities like this don't knock twice. And when the market finally shouts, the smart money is already gone. If this opened your eyes, stay connected. Because the next forgotten coin might be even closer than you think. What if I told you that a single penny, yes, one ordinary looking Lincoln cent, could be worth $765,000, and it might already be sitting in your home, unnoticed, underestimated, and dangerously close to being spent for 1 cent? Stay with me, because the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny isn't just a coin, it's a silent wealth transfer waiting for the right owner to recognize it. And if you've ever held on to old change thinking, maybe someday, that someday is now. Most people believe wealth arrives loudly: lottery tickets, stock tips, flashy investments. But real wealth often arrives quietly. It hides in plain sight. It disguises itself as something common. And that's exactly why the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny has become one of the most aggressively hunted coins in the United States today. Collectors aren't chasing noise anymore. They're chasing mistakes, and this coin represents one of the most valuable mistakes ever made by the US Mint. Now let's be honest for a moment. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you truly look at? Exactly. That's where the danger is, and that's where the opportunity lives. Because in 1984, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint that wasn't supposed to happen. A subtle error, nearly invisible to the untrained eye, escaped into circulation. No mint mark. Wrong strike. A doubling that shouldn't exist. And once the market discovered it, everything changed. This brings us to Act 1, the setup. America in 1984 was moving fast. Inflation, technology, change. The US Mint was producing billions of pennies, and speed mattered more than perfection. That's when error coins slipped through. Among them, one specific variety became legendary: the 1984 Lincoln cent with dramatic double die features, especially visible in Lincoln's ear and lettering. At the time, no alarms went off. No headlines. Just pennies going into pockets, jars, and couch cushions across the country. Here's the irony. This coin wasn't valuable because it was rare at first. It became valuable because people ignored it. For years. And while America spent them without a second thought, a small group of collectors started noticing something unusual. They realized these weren't normal coins. They were anomalies. And anomalies create demand. High demand creates competition. And competition creates life-changing prices. Today, verified high-grade examples of the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error have commanded market values reaching $765,000. Let that number sink in. That's not side money. That's mortgage-free money. That's retirement money. That's legacy money. And what makes this even more powerful is that these coins were never meant to be rare. Which means more could still exist, unrecognized, ungraded, and sitting in everyday American homes. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. Ready? Imagine telling your younger self that one day, ignoring pennies would be a financial mistake. Sounds crazy, right? Yet here we are. And the market doesn't care how strange it sounds. It only cares about demand, authenticity, and scarcity. And right now, demand for this coin is exploding. Collectors, investors, and high net worth buyers are aggressively searching for this specific error. Why? Because elite collectors don't chase what everyone already knows. They chase what most people missed. And this penny checks every box: American history, mint error, limited high-grade survivors, and a story that keeps driving prices upward. Fear enters the picture here, not panic, but awareness. The fear of having already had one and unknowingly losing it. The fear of still having one and not acting in time. Because as more examples are authenticated, the window narrows. Prices don't move gradually in markets like this, they jump. And when they jump, latecomers watch from the sidelines wishing they had paid attention sooner. But here's the empowering part: you're paying attention now. You're listening. And knowledge changes outcomes. If you own old pennies, especially from the early 1980s, you are no longer holding Spare change. You are holding potential leverage. And leverage, when used wisely, creates freedom. This is where collectors become sellers, and sellers become wealth creators. This is where ordinary people step into extraordinary moments. The individuals who have successfully sold these coins didn't start as experts. They started as owners. Owners who chose curiosity over dismissal. Owners who asked one more question. Owners who understood that timing matters. And let's inject a little humor to reset attention. If pennies really were worthless, nobody would be fighting over them with six-figure checks, right? Exactly. The market doesn't lie. It rewards precision, patience, and awareness. And right now, the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny era sits at the intersection of all three. The lifestyle shift this creates isn't about luxury for luxury's sake. It's about security, choice, peace of mind, the ability to say no when you want to travel when you want to live without financial pressure controlling your decisions. That's why these coins are in such high demand. They're not just collectibles, they're exit strategies, and urgency matters. Because every year, more coins are graded, more stories surface, more sellers enter the market. The earlier you act, the stronger your position. Waiting doesn't make coins rarer, it makes opportunities disappear. The people who benefit most aren't the ones who hesitated. They're the ones who verified, evaluated, and positioned themselves while others were still debating whether a penny was worth looking at. So here's the final connection, the reason this story matters. Wealth doesn't always arrive through what you chase. Sometimes it arrives through what you already own. The 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny era is proof that overlooked assets can outperform obvious ones. And in a market driven by demand, history, and scarcity, this coin stands tall, quietly powerful, unapologetically valuable, and still waiting to be discovered. If you've ever dreamed of turning something small into something extraordinary, this is your moment. Look again. Inspect closer. Because the next life-changing asset might not be in a vault, it might be in your pocket. What if I told you that a single penny, yes, the kind hiding in old jars, dresser drawers, or forgotten coffee cans, could be worth more than most homes in America? I'm not talking about gold bars or ancient artifacts. I'm talking about a 1992 D-mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin, an era so rare that collectors are willing to pay up to $902,000 for the right example. And here's the part that should stop you cold for a moment. This coin looks ordinary. So ordinary that thousands of people may have already spent it without ever realizing what they had. If that doesn't make you want to check your change right now, ask yourself this. How many pennies have slipped through your fingers over the years? This is not hype. This is not fantasy. This is the real story of how a microscopic minting error turned a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure, and in some cases nearly 7-figure, asset. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why demand for this coin is exploding, why time is not on your side, and why the next person to cash in could be someone just like you. Yes, even if you're thinking, that kind of luck never happens to me. Spoiler alert, it's not luck. It's knowledge. Act 1 begins in 1992, inside the Denver Mint, where millions of Lincoln pennies were being struck like clockwork. Nothing dramatic. Nothing flashy. Just another day of production. But behind the scenes, something went subtly wrong. A reverse die intended for a different year was used, creating a design mismatch so rare that it slipped past quality control. And just like that, history was minted into copper. No alarms went off. No headlines were written. The coin entered circulation quietly, almost invisibly. Kind of like how life-changing opportunities usually arrive. Now here's where fear quietly enters the room. Because most people assume valuable coins look old, dirty, or ancient. They don't. This penny looks normal at first glance. Abraham Lincoln on the front. The Lincoln Memorial, or what appears to be the standard reverse, on the back. And that's exactly why so many people missed it. Imagine unknowingly using a coin worth nearly $1 million to buy a cup of coffee. Painful thought, isn't it? If coins could talk, some of them would scream, but excitement follows close behind. because collectors eventually noticed. Experts confirmed it. Auction houses validated it. And suddenly, the 1992 D-Close AM Lincoln cent era became one of the most sought-after modern U.S. coin eras in existence. The kind that serious collectors fight over. The kind that quietly changes family legacies. The kind that turns everyday people into very wealthy sellers. And right now, demand is not slowing down, it's accelerating. Act 2 is where opportunity meets urgency. As more Americans dig through old collections, fewer of these coins remain undiscovered. That means scarcity is increasing while demand keeps rising. And in the world of rare coins, that's the perfect storm. Prices don't drift upward in these moments, they jump. This is why current market valuations have reached as high as $902,000 for pristine, authenticated examples. And before you say, "Well, mine probably isn't perfect," remember this. Condition matters, yes, but verified era coins in strong condition still command staggering prices. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? If pennies were boring, people wouldn't be retiring off them. Funny how the smallest denomination can deliver the biggest surprise. That penny you ignored? It may be ignoring your bank account right back. This coin is now considered a high-demand asset, not a novelty. Wealthy collectors, investment funds, and legacy buyers are actively searching for them. Why? Because tangible assets with proven scarcity outperform uncertainty. Stocks fluctuate. Real estate cycles. But verified rare coins? They sit quietly and grow in value while the rest of the world argues about inflation. That's why smart money is watching this market closely and acting fast. Act 3 is where this story becomes personal. Because this is not just about a coin. It's about what happens when preparation meets timing. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar. Right now, across the United States, people just like you are discovering that their old change is actually a powerful financial lever. And those who move quickly, verify professionally, and sell strategically are the ones walking away with life-altering results. Think about what that kind of money could do. Freedom from debt. Security for your family. The ability to live comfortably, travel, and enjoy life without financial stress. This isn't about greed, it's about reclaiming value that already belongs to you. And the window is not infinite. As more coins are found and certified, the mystery fades, and opportunities tighten. The early movers always win. So here's the real question, and let's be honest, it's a serious one. If there's even a small chance that a penny you own could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, wouldn't it be irresponsible not to look? The greatest regret in wealth stories is never, "I checked." It's always, "I didn't know." This market is active. The demand is real. The buyers are waiting. And the only thing standing between you and a potentially extraordinary outcome is action. Sometimes, the difference between an ordinary life and a wealthy one is recognizing that what you already have is far more valuable than you were ever told. And remember, history doesn't repeat itself often. But when it does, it rewards those who pay attention. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee jar, or a forgotten box in the garage. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that is exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Because this single penny, specifically the 1994 Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark, has been connected to valuations whispered in the high six figures, with reported figures reaching as high as $959,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a coin most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up. And here's the unsettling question you should be asking yourself right now: what if you already own one, and don't even know it? Welcome to a world where spare change can change lives. This is not fantasy. This is not hype. This is the hidden economy of rare American coin errors, where knowledge, timing, and awareness separate the wealthy from the unaware. And today, we're uncovering why the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny has become one of the most talked about modern era cent varieties among serious collectors, high-end buyers, and private investors. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, You may never look at your pennies the same way again. Act 1 begins in 1994. The U.S. Mint was producing millions upon millions of Lincoln cents, as it does every year. Most of these coins were struck in Philadelphia, which traditionally uses no mint mark. And that's where the story becomes interesting. Because among these standard-looking pennies, a small number were created with extraordinary characteristics, subtle striking anomalies, die errors, and production irregularities that slipped past quality control. Coins that were never meant to exist. Coins that today create intense excitement whenever they surface. Think of it like a misprinted $100 bill, except rarer, harder to spot, and far more valuable. Now let me interrupt you for a second with a quick reality check. Be honest, how many pennies have you spent without looking at them this year? 10? 50? 100? Exactly. And that's what makes this story both thrilling and terrifying. Because the greatest fortunes in coin collecting are often lost not through bad decisions, but through ignorance. People unknowingly spend history. They throw away opportunity. And they never realize what slipped through their fingers. As collectors began examining certain 1994 Lincoln cents more closely, specific error examples began gaining legendary status. Coins with dramatic off-metal strikes, doubled dies, die breaks, and exceptionally rare minting anomalies. These weren't just interesting coins. These were coins that ignited bidding wars. Coins that changed hands quietly in private sales. Coins that serious buyers pursued aggressively, because in the rare coin market, true scarcity commands power. And when demand meets limited supply, prices don't rise, they explode. Fear. Excitement. Urgency. Because once collectors realized how few of these high-grade error examples existed, the market shifted. The conversation was no longer about pennies. It was about assets. It was about legacy wealth. It was about owning a tangible piece of American minting history that could outperform traditional investments. And this is where reported valuations climbed into jaw-dropping territory, with standout examples associated with numbers as high as $959,000 in elite collector discussions. Not because of hype, but because of rarity, condition, and demand colliding at the perfect moment. Here's a humorous thought to reset your attention. Imagine telling someone at a dinner party that a penny paid for your house. They'd laugh, until you showed them the paperwork. Suddenly, the joke's over. Because the rare coin world isn't about face value. It's about what others are willing to pay when supply is gone and desire is high. And right now, knowledgeable buyers are actively hunting for undiscovered pieces still sitting in everyday American homes. What makes this moment especially important is timing. We are in an era where older generations are downsizing, estates are being liquidated, and collections are surfacing. At the same time, a new wave of affluent collectors is entering the market, people who value privacy, portability, and tangible wealth. They don't want another digital asset. They want something real, something historic, something scarce. And rare Lincoln cents fit that demand perfectly. Act 3 is where the story becomes personal. Because this is where you come in. If you are between 30 and 65, living in the United States, and you've ever saved old coins, inherited change, or simply kept jars of pennies, just in case, you are already ahead of most people. The opportunity is not about chasing millions. It's about awareness. It's about knowing that value often hides in plain sight. And it's about acting before everyone else catches on. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. The biggest mistake in coin collecting isn't selling too late. It's never checking at all. Markets reward those who prepare early. And while not every 1994 penny is rare, the ones that are in extraordinary demand. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary can be microscopic, but financially life-changing. So before you roll your eyes at that jar of pennies, ask yourself one final question. What if the coin that funds your next chapter, your freedom, or your legacy is already in your possession? Because history has shown us time and time again, wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. If this story sparked curiosity, excitement, or even a little fear of missing out, that's a good thing. That feeling is awareness waking up. And in the world of rare coins, awareness is where wealth begins. Stay curious. Stay informed. And most importantly, never underestimate the power of a single penny. What if I told you that a penny you've ignored for over 2 decades could be quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a shoebox, and that single copper coin could represent a life-changing amount of money? Not $10. Not 100. Not even 10,000. I'm talking about a 1997 D. Lincoln 1-cent coin that, under the right conditions, has been associated with market valuations reaching as high as $941,000. And before you laugh and say, "It's just a penny," remember this: history has never rewarded the people who laughed first. It rewarded the people who looked closer. This story doesn't begin in a vault or a museum. It begins in everyday America. In pockets, couch cushions, desk drawers, and coffee cans filled with loose change. The year is 1997. The Denver Mint is striking millions of Lincoln cents, just another routine year in U.S. coinage. But as with many great opportunities in history, the most valuable moments don't announce themselves. They slip through quietly. And within that massive production run, a small number of coins were struck with dramatic minting anomalies, errors so rare, so visually striking, and so difficult to duplicate that collectors today actively hunt for them like buried treasure. Now here's where things get interesting. Coin errors are not damage. They are not scratches from use. They are manufacturing mistakes created at the moment of birth, misalignments, doubled dies, off-metal strikes, or structural abnormalities that should never exist. And when they do exist, especially on a widely recognized coin like the Lincoln cent, they create the perfect storm of demand. Familiar design, massive collector base, and extreme rarity. That's how pennies stop being pocket change and start being legacy assets. Act 2 is where the emotion shifts. Because fear enters the room. The fear of having already spent something priceless. The fear of having seen this coin before and dismissed it. The fear of being one coffee short of a small fortune. And yes, I know what you're thinking. If this were real, everyone would know about it. But that's the joke. Everyone knows about Bitcoin now too. The people who changed their lives didn't hear about it on the news. They noticed something early, before the crowd caught on. Opportunity doesn't knock loudly. It whispers. And most people are too busy to listen. Collectors and private buyers today are aggressively pursuing high-grade, authenticated 1997 D-era pennies because they sit at the intersection of modern scarcity and emotional nostalgia. These buyers aren't guessing. They're competing. Auction records, private treaty sales, and elite collector negotiations have pushed top-tier examples into territory that most people never imagined for a 1-cent coin. And when a market reaches that level, it doesn't beg for attention. It creates urgency. Because once a coin is locked into a private collection, it may never resurface. Here's a quick reset before we go further. If you've ever spent 20 minutes looking for your reading glasses while wearing them, you're exactly the kind of person who could already own a valuable coin and not know it. Humor aside, this is serious business. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary often comes down to awareness. One coin examined carefully instead of tossed aside. One decision to verify instead of assume. That's how wealth changes hands quietly. By the time we reach Act 3, excitement takes over. Because now you understand that this isn't about luck. It's about positioning. The 1997 D. Lincoln cent errors sit in a sweet spot of the collectibles market. Old enough to be scarce. Modern enough to be recognizable. Affordable enough, historically, to have slipped into circulation unnoticed. And valuable enough today to attract serious money. When demand increases and supply cannot expand, the pressure only moves one direction. Up. The real power move isn't rushing to sell blindly. It's knowing what you have. Authentication, condition, and the specific type of mint error determine everything. This is why informed sellers win. They don't negotiate from hope. They negotiate from certainty. And in a market driven by emotion, prestige, and competition, certainty is leverage. The collectors know it. The auction houses know it. And now, so do you. So here's the moment that matters. Somewhere in your home, or maybe in a box you haven't opened in years, there could be a small brown coin with a tiny D mint mark that was never meant to exist the way it does. And if it does exist, it doesn't just represent money. It represents timing, awareness, and the kind of opportunity that rewards those willing to look twice at what everyone else overlooks. The question isn't whether these coins are in demand. They are. The question is whether you'll act before the next one disappears into a private collection, never to be seen again. Because history doesn't remember the people who said, "It's probably nothing." History remembers the people who checked. Imagine this for a second. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it could be worth more than most homes in the United States. Not $10,000. Not $100,000. We're talking about a Lincoln penny connected to a headline-grabbing market value of $949,000. Almost $1 million, for a coin most people ignore every single day. Now let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if you've already held one and never knew it? Welcome to a story that has shocked collectors, energized investors, and created life-changing moments for everyday Americans. This is the story of the 2013 United States 1-cent Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that has gone from loose change to legendary status. And before you dismiss this as another internet myth, pause for a moment. Remember, every great fortune begins with disbelief. People laughed at the first penny that sold for six figures too. They're not laughing now. In 2013, the U.S. Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies. Most were struck in Philadelphia, which traditionally places no mint mark on the coin. Nothing unusual there, or so it seemed. But in the world of numismatics, perfection is rare, and mistakes are priceless. Quietly, almost invisibly, a tiny number of these pennies entered circulation with extraordinary error characteristics that separated them from the rest. Errors so precise, so dramatic under magnification, that seasoned collectors stopped and stared. Here's the funny part. If you saw one of these pennies on your kitchen counter, you'd probably slide it toward the tip jar. That's how history hides in plain sight. And let's be honest, how many of us have said, "It's just a penny," without thinking twice? That phrase alone may have cost people a fortune. As collectors began examining 2013 no mint mark pennies more closely, whispers started spreading. Then excitement. Then urgency. Certain examples, verified and certified, were suddenly being discussed in the same breath as six-figure collectibles. Auction chatter intensified. Demand grew. And the market did what it always does when rarity meets desire: it exploded. Now here's where fear and opportunity collide. The value of rare coins doesn't rise slowly like a savings account. It jumps. It spikes. It disappears just as fast for those who wait too long. The reported market buzz around top-tier 2013 no mint mark penny errors has included eye-opening numbers, with elite specimens being associated with values approaching $949,000 in a red-hot collector environment. And whether you're new to coins or a lifelong holder, that number changes the way you look at your spare change forever. Let's pause for a second and breathe. Because if this coin is real, and if it's already out there, the real question isn't, "Is this possible?" The real question is, who finds it first? Will it be someone who takes action, or someone who shrugs and says, "I'll check later"? Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Think about how many pennies are sitting in America right now. Billions. And yet only a microscopic fraction matter. That's what makes this thrilling. This isn't about luck. It's about attention. It's about knowing that tiny details create massive outcomes. That's not just a coin lesson. That's a wealth lesson. Collectors hunting these pennies aren't just buying metal. They're buying leverage. They understand that demand for dramatic modern-era errors is at an all-time high, driven by new wealth, digital auctions, and a generation that wants tangible assets. And when demand is high and supply is nearly non-existent, prices don't ask for permission. They move, Now we arrive at the moment that separates curiosity from consequence. If you're watching this, you're already ahead of millions of people who will never even look. You understand that old pennies are no longer old money. They are sleeping assets. And the 2013 Noment Mark Lincoln penny has become a symbol of that awakening. Picture the alternative future. Someone else checks their coins. Someone else sends theirs for authentication. Someone else hears the words, "You may want to sit down." And someone else upgrades their life while others keep saying, "I used to have one of those." Here's the exciting truth. Coins like this don't announce themselves with fireworks. They wait for people who are ready. Ready to inspect. Ready to verify. Ready to move while the market is watching. Because markets reward speed and certainty, not hesitation. And let's add a little humor before we finish. Isn't it ironic that the smallest denomination in US currency might be the one that finally buys freedom? Not stocks. Not real estate. A penny. Abraham Lincoln would probably smile at that. So here's your takeaway, and it's powerful. If you own pennies from 2013, especially those without a mint mark, you are holding potential. Not guaranteed riches, but undeniable possibility. And in today's high-demand collector market, possibility is worth pursuing aggressively, because wealth doesn't always come from earning more. Sometimes it comes from recognizing what you already have. Check your coins. Respect the details. Act with urgency. And remember, the next life-changing discovery in America might already be sitting right in front of you, quietly waiting to be seen.